is our pleasure to welcome back to the show my good friend Trevor Sikkema, who works for Pro Football Focus, does their draft show, is on the NFL draft year-round. And Trevor, the reason I wanted to have you on is because all of a sudden the Commanders have multiple top 50 picks. Like, who knows where their pick's going to wind up? They could package some of those to trade up. They could stay put. And, well, I want to know what they've just gotten themselves into, and who better to ask than you. So thanks for the time, man.
No, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is, I don't cover the NFL as closely as I do the NFL draft, but trade deadline time is always a lot of fun because the draft order will always change. Maybe not at the very top, but Washington now becomes one of those teams that when you head on over to PFF Mock Draft Simulator, they're one of the more fun teams to draft with because they've got 5 picks in the first 3 rounds now. So it's a good time to talk draft, no doubt about it.
So the thought going into this draft, obviously, like Caleb Williams at the top, Drake May's right there. There's a bunch of other quarterbacks. As we're halfway through the college football season, what's the quarterback strength in this class, and what effect might that have on the other elite players in it?
No, this class is really exciting, and I'm trying not to just sound biased because I love the NFL draft and the process, but when you look at what would be the 3 certainly pillar positions, premium positions, I should say. It's quarterback, it's pass rusher, and it's offensive tackle. All 3 of those are really strong. And then you probably throw in lockdown corner there as well. And then I know a lot of people look to wide receiver as one of those premium positions, though it's been drafted as such over the last couple of years. Both of those are strong as well. So you have a really, really alluring draft class. It's a good year to have a lot of these picks. And so I did not think that Washington would be this all in on this upcoming draft. Certainly it feels like a make or break year for that coaching staff. I didn't think that they would be this big of sellers at the deadline, but man, for them to get a very early 2nd round pick, now holding 2, and to get another 3rd round pick, now holding 2 3rd round picks as well, that bodes well for them to really have a nice slingshot into what we think is going to be this next wave or new winning window kind of coming up as they rebuild a little bit here.
So the offensive tackle spot is definitely one where, like, Charles Leno's been pretty good for them for a couple of years now, but if you want to go draft a young stud there, no one's going to complain. Wiley's been a bit of an adventure at right tackle. He's been more fine than people realize, but like he's still Andrew Wiley. And so those positions in particular, the tackle spots, if that is where they want to go high in this draft, who are some of the names that folks should be watching over the next couple of weeks of college football to see what they look like?
Yeah, certainly they're holding the number 11 overall pick, and you think with as much as they were selling their pass rush this week, they're probably going to end up in the top 10 when it's all said and done, and I think they'll have a chance to pick. One of the big 3 at the top that I have right now is Olu Fashanu from Penn State. He's their left tackle. Joe Alt, the left tackle from Notre Dame, and then Talisa Fuaga. Not a lot of people know him. He plays out at Oregon State. He is their right tackle there, but I think all 3 of those guys are future NFL pros. You get a little bit further than that, guys like J.C. Latham, the right tackle from Alabama, Amarius Mims, hasn't played a ton, but the right tackle for Georgia, a lot like Broderick Jones, what we saw last year from Georgia, where not a ton of experience with Jones, but the movement skills, the potential, the size, it's all there. It's the same thing for Amarius Mims. And so no matter where they are picking in the first round, they're going to have an opportunity to select one of these guys. And it just feels like a lot of people, when I've talked to those who have been doing mock drafts for Washington and fans of the Commanders as well, that seems to be where they go. So whether it's a right tackle or a left tackle, they're going to have the opportunity to pick any of those players. Of the 3 at the top that I think would probably go in the top 10, Fashanu's just, man, he's so good at pass protection. And he's got to get stronger. There's no doubt about it. I think the Ohio State tape a couple weeks ago shed some light on the fact that he's got to get a little bit bigger. He's got to get some more strength. He's got to be able to anchor better because Ohio State had a clear game plan to just go right through his chest. And that's about as good as anybody's gotten Fashanu throughout the last 2 years of him starting. Joe Alt, he's just been such a steady left tackle from Notre Dame, getting better every single year. He's 6'8". He's massive, great, solid prospect to get. And then Talise Fuaga, man, I think that this guy's got some of the meanest streak that you could see in an offensive tackle. When he is blocking you in the run game, he's not just trying to get in front of you. He's trying to bury you to the sideline, to the ground, make sure you're not getting back in the play. And then he takes a lot of that mentality towards pass blocking as well. So it's a good year to need an offensive tackle. So if that's where Washington wants to go, there won't be any shortages of guys in the first round, or I would even say in the second round as well.
Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, with us here on the Hoffman Show. And suddenly, Trevor, they also need pass rushers. Amazing how that works with these two trades today. And before we get to some of the names in this draft, I just had this thought in the last segment responding to a caller, and I'm curious how this plays into your analysis and what you can tell us about this stat. But we've heard a lot about sack to pressure, or pressure to sack ratio, sack to pressure ratio, however you want to ratio it, with Sam Howell on the quarterback side of things. But how does that kind of factor into a defensive end evaluation where, like, okay, Chase Young this year has got a lot of pressures, but they haven't necessarily turned into sacks at the same rate as some other elite guys have. So how does that stat tend to play into defensive end evaluation?
Yeah, I think that pressures to me are the more telling stat than sacks are. But there's no doubt about it that the guys who are able to finish the play and get that sack statistic, I think that's a appropriate bonus to say, like, hey, not only is this guy getting a lot of pressures, but he's finishing in the backfield as well. I think another stat that we have over at Pro Football Focus is a pass rush win percentage that we're able to take a look at. And that really individualizes the performance of the pass rushers themselves to say, hey, how often are they beating the offensive tackle in front of them? And you know, it's not like, okay, if the play goes on for 3 or 4 seconds and then he beats the offensive tackle, like that counts as a win. No. It's really, do you win off of your first move? Can you get into the backfield? Are you creating that kind of disruption? That's what really logs those stats and gets those numbers up high. Chase Young he has a much higher number in the pass rush win percentage category than he has his entire NFL career. He's up near 20%, and I think the best in the NFL are somewhere around 23-24%. That's normally, the Myles Garretts, the Max Crosbys, the TJ Watts. Those guys are somewhere around 23-24, I think, when a season is all said and done. So those are a lot of better ways to evaluate pass rushers, because I would even say that, okay, if you take only one of them, certainly I would say that win percentage is probably the strongest, then it's pressures, then it's sacks, but you don't really get the whole story with how well a guy is playing unless you use all three. And I think that's the part that gets lost on a lot of people when they make arguments for, especially pass rushers. A lot of people like to cherry pick certain stats, and you got to paint the whole picture for these guys. And so that's how I would say we go about evaluating that.
Right, and then obviously there's the whole run game side of it as well, which is why a guy like Sweat is tremendous, and Chase this year was leaving more to be desired. All right, so when we look at the edge rushers for Washington, it's hard to know what kind of player they're going to want because we assume there's going to be a new staff. We don't know if they're looking at 3-4 players, like 3-4 edges, 4-3 edges. Are these guys they want to set like a good hard edge in the run game versus elite pass rushers? But what kind of crop are we looking at of edge players in this upcoming draft?
A lot of guys to choose from, I think, probably within the first 2 rounds of the draft. Now, obviously, if you're a good pass rusher, you're going to get picked within the first 2 rounds. And so when you hit on gems that are 3rd round and beyond, I mean, that's just a tip to your scouting department there. But look, I think that right now, good case for 5 or 6 edge players who all go in the first round this year. I think the guys like Latu from UCLA, who is already just such a technician with his pass rush profile. I think the same can be said about JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State. These guys, wise beyond their years about how you get past these offensive tackles, how you attack the half man, what to do with your hands, not only initial pass rush moves, but also counters as well. You've got players who are really twitched up athletes. I think of Dallas Turner from Alabama, Chop Robinson from Penn State, Braylon Trice from Washington, these guys who are very explosive off the first step. They can win with speed, but man, guys like Robinson and Trice, they can win with power too. That speed to power combination where they're just going straight at your chest relentlessly, those dudes are tough to block, and we've seen that over the last couple of years in college football. Another name I'll throw out, Jared Verse from Florida State. I don't think any player in the country has increased their draft stock more than he has over the last 2 years. He was at FCS. He was at Albany's football program before transferring to Florida State and showing that he not only belonged in the FBS, he was one of the best in the nation at it. So he's another guy who I think has that power speed combination. So there are plenty of different players of guys who come in all different shapes and sizes. But I think, again, you'll have the opportunity to, whether it's in the first round or even at that top of the second round, now that they have that selection, you'll have your chance to pick an edge rusher that could be a starter for you.
No doubt. And that's one of the fascinating things to me is like, if the draft is this deep, you probably wind up taking 2. But if there's a guy you love, they now have the ammunition to move up, which is going to be fun. And obviously the position you most likely move up for is quarterback. They're still very much in the Sam Howell evaluation category. And I think probably if you had to lean one way or another right now, you like what you see from Sam. You try to move forward with him because contractually it just makes so much sense. But if the next 9 games go sideways and they are in the quarterback market, how has that class developed after being so hyped before the season?
Oh, no, I think that it's still fantastic. Look, I know that Caleb Williams has struggled lately for the first time in his college career, and a lot of people are freaking out about that. But the things that Williams is able to do, it's rare, and that's stuff that you still covet. I think Drake May is fantastic. I was pretty in on Bo Nix before the season started. He had a fantastic year last year, and I think that he is having just as good of a year this season. So I think he's a first-round quarterback as well. You've got guys like J.J. McCarthy and Shedeur Sanders who have improved a lot, I think, over this season, who could be first-round picks. And then an interesting one's Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. He's got some insane numbers. I don't know if he's the front runner for the Heisman or if he's in that top 3, but I know he's close to the very top just because of what he's been able to do with that team. He's a gunslinger, man. If you want a guy who could push the ball down the field vertically, give his receivers a chance to go get the ball, and as we've seen with Washington's offense, have the chance to put up a lot of points, I think he can be your guy. I think a big wild card for me is probably Jaden Daniels from LSU. Last year, he really focused on keeping the turnover-worthy plays down, and he absolutely did. This year, he's getting a little bit more aggressive. He's keeping that ratio of turnover-worthy plays down, not as low as it was last year, but the big-time throws and the average depth of target's a lot further up. So he has just improved every single season, whether he was at Arizona State or whether he's now at LSU, and I think that he is somebody who gives you that dual threat ability as a rusher as well. So, man, those 7 quarterbacks right there, I think those are all guys who could be those first-rounders wherever you're picking.
That's a huge number, and that is definitely going to majorly impact the shape of the draft so many months from now, but also so few months from now. Nobody knows that better than Trevor Sikkema, who hosts the draft coverage, their lead draft insider at Pro Football Focus. Trevor, always appreciate your time here on the radio. Great stuff as always, my friend, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, of course, my friend. Anytime.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.